throwaway account because my wife and some of her family know my main Reddit handle. I'm a 43-year-old man living in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I've been married for 17 years. No kids, just us two and a house we've been paying on since 2011. I work as an HVAC technician for a local company. Been there going on 12 years now. My wife is 42 and she works as an office coordinator for a property management company. Between the two of us, we do okay. Not rich by any stretch, but comfortable enough to have a decent life. We bought our house back when prices were still recovering from the crash and locked in at a pretty good rate at the time. Over the years, we've built up solid equity, probably around 140,000 at this point, based on what similar homes in our neighborhood have sold for. That equity is about to become the center of the biggest fight we've ever had. And honestly, I don't know if our marriage is going to survive it. About 4 months ago, I found out my wife had been having an affair. The way I found out was almost cliche, like something out of a bad movie. She left her iPad on the kitchen counter, and a message notification popped up while I was making coffee. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. The screen just lit up, and the preview showed enough of the message that my stomach twisted into a knot. It was from a coworker of hers, some guy I met maybe twice at her company holiday parties. The message said something about missing her and counting down the days until they could be together again. I stood there in my own kitchen, coffee getting cold, feeling like someone slapped the shit out of me. When I confronted her that evening, she tried to deny it at first. She said it was just a joke, that he was being weird, and she was going to report him to HR. But I had already looked through more of the messages by then. The messages went back about 9 months. 9 months of them talking every day. 9 months of them meeting up for lunches that turned into something else. 9 months of her lying to my face about working late or grabbing drinks with her girlfriends. When she realized I saw everything, she finally broke down and admitted the truth. She said it started innocently. He was going through a divorce and she felt bad for him. They would grab coffee and talk, and somewhere along the way, feelings developed. She told me they have only been physical a handful of times. I don't know if that's supposed to make me feel better, but it didn't. Whether it was 1 time or 50 times, she still chose to betray everything we'd built together. The weeks after that confession were brutal. I moved into the guest room and could barely look at her. She cried constantly, apologized constantly, begged me not to leave. She claimed to have already ended things with him before I found out. According to her, the guilt had been eating her alive, and she was trying to figure out how to tell me. I don't know if I believe that part. Cheaters always seem to have been just about to confess when they get caught. But I will say this, when I checked her phone and her accounts, everything was deleted. His number was blocked. His social media was blocked. She even transferred to a different department within her company so she wouldn't have to see him every day. Whether that was genuine remorse or just damage control, I honestly couldn't tell you. I spent about 6 weeks in a fog, going through the motions at work and coming home to this tense, silent house. I thought about leaving more times than I can count, but 17 years is a long time. We'd built a whole life together, and throwing that away felt impossible, even though staying felt impossible too. Eventually, I agreed to try couples counseling. Yeah, I kept hearing the so-called alpha males telling me it was a mistake, but I wanted to give marriage counseling a try. I wasn't optimistic, but I figured I owed it to myself to at least attempt to work through this before making any permanent decisions. We've been going for about 2.5 months now, and I'll admit, some progress has been made. She's been transparent with her phone and her schedule. She got herself into individual therapy too. She's been saying all the right things and, for the most part, doing all the right things. But here's the thing about trust. Once it's broken, it doesn't just come back because someone apologizes. I'm still angry, I'm still hurt, and I'm still not sure if I want to spend the rest of my life with someone who could do this to me. Which brings us to the current situation. About 3 weeks ago, my wife sat me down and said she wanted to talk about refinancing our house. Interest rates have come down a bit from their peak, and she'd been crunching numbers. Her idea was to do a cash out refinance, pull about 60,000 from our equity, and use that money for a few different things. She wanted to pay off both our cars, which would free up about $900 a month. She wanted to put some money into renovating the kitchen and bathrooms, which she said would increase the home's value, and she wanted to use the rest to put into a savings account as an emergency fund. On paper, it doesn't sound unreasonable. Lower monthly car payments, updated house, money in the bank. I can see why she thought I would be on board. But the moment she brought it up, something in me just shut down. I told her I needed to think about it, and for the past few weeks I've been thinking. Here's where I've landed. I don't want to refinance. I don't want to sign any new financial documents with her. I don't want to be tied to her any more than I already am, because honestly, I still don't know if I'm staying. When I told her this, she was devastated. She asked me what I meant by not knowing if I was staying. I told her the truth, that I'm still working through everything, and I haven't made a final decision about our marriage. She started crying and asked if the counseling meant nothing. I said the counseling has helped, but helping and healing are two different things. I told her I'm not ready to make a major financial commitment with someone when I don't know if I want to be with them in a year from now. She accused me of punishing her. She said I was using the house as leverage to keep her in a constant state of anxiety. She said that by refusing to move forward with any financial decisions, I was essentially keeping our whole life on pause while I decided her fate. Maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. What I do know is that refinancing right now feels like a trap. If we pull 60,000 out of this house and then I decide I want a divorce 6 months from now, everything becomes more complicated. We would owe more on the house, the equity would be reduced, and splitting assets would be messier. I've talked to a lawyer, just a consultation, nothing official. He explained that in Virginia, marital assets get divided equitably in a divorce, which means fairly, but not necessarily 50-50. He said the court considers a lot of factors when deciding how to split things up. He said the house would likely need to be sold, or one of us would have to buy the other out. If we refinance now and drain the equity, there might not be much left to divide. When I explained this to my wife, she accused me of already having one foot out the door. She said that if I was consulting divorce lawyers while we were in counseling, then I clearly wasn't committed to saving our marriage. I told her I was being realistic. I told her that she was the one who blew up our marriage, and I'm the one who must figure out how to pick up the pieces. Part of figuring that out is understanding my options and protecting myself. She didn't like that answer. She said that by talking to lawyers and refusing to refinance, I was treating her like an adversary instead of a partner. I said that maybe if she hadn't slept with her coworker, I would still see her as a partner. That was harsh, I know, but I was angry, and the words came out before I could stop them. Things have been even more tense since that conversation. We are still going to counseling, but now there's this added layer of conflict about the house. Our therapist has tried to help us work through it, but we keep going in circles. My wife thinks I'm being spiteful and controlling. She thinks I'm holding the house hostage as a way to punish her. I think I'm being cautious and protecting myself from getting burned again. Here's the thing that really gets me though. She wants to use this refinance money to fix up the house and pay off our cars, but those cars are almost paid off anyway. We've got maybe 14 months left on mine and 22 months on hers. Why would we add that debt back onto our mortgage and pay interest on it for decades? I know she says the overall payment would be lower, but stretching car payments over the life of a mortgage doesn't seem smart to me. And the kitchen renovation? We've lived with this kitchen for over a decade. It's not super modern or anything, but to me, it works. Why is updating it suddenly urgent right now in the middle of all this chaos? Part of me wonders if she's trying to make the house nicer so that if we do divorce, she can argue for keeping it. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I can't shake the suspicion that there's an angle here I'm not seeing. When I brought this up in counseling, my wife got really upset. She said I was questioning her motives about everything now, and maybe I was right. Maybe I will never trust her again. She said that if I couldn't move forward with her on anything, then what was the point of staying married? The therapist stepped in and said we needed to separate the financial decisions from the emotional ones. She suggested we table the refinance discussion for now and focus on rebuilding trust first. My wife reluctantly agreed, but I could tell she was frustrated. She thinks I'm stalling. Maybe I am. But I don't think making major financial decisions while your marriage is in crisis is a good idea. Here's where things got even messier. My wife told her sister about the refinance situation. She didn't tell her about the affair, just that I was refusing to refinance, and it was causing problems. Her sister called me a couple days ago and tried to lecture me about being financially irresponsible. She said interest rates might go back up and we would be missing a window. She said I was being stubborn and making my wife miserable. I wanted to tell her the whole truth so badly. I wanted to say that her sister had been sleeping around, and that's why I don't want to sign anything with her. But I didn't. I just said it was between me and my wife and ended the call. My wife was mad that I was rude to her sister. I was mad that she was talking about our finances to her family without giving them the full context. It's really none of their fucking business. Of course, her sister thinks I'm the bad guy. She doesn't know what her sister did. I said that to my wife, and she broke down crying again. She said she's too ashamed to tell her family about the affair. She said she can't handle them knowing what she did. I told her that was her choice, but she doesn't get to let them think I'm the villain in this when she's the one who broke us. That conversation didn't end well. Now, I'm at this point where I genuinely don't know what to do. Part of me wants to just sign the refinance papers and move on. Part of me wants to file for divorce and be done with all of it. And part of me wants to stay in this holding pattern forever because making either decision feels terrifying. Our counselor has suggested that I need to make a choice about the marriage itself before we can make any progress. She said that staying in limbo isn't fair to either of us. I know she's right, but I'm not ready. I keep going back and forth in my head. Some days I look at my wife and remember all the good years we had. I remember how we used to laugh together, how we used to dream about the future together, and I think maybe we can get back to that. But then other days I look at her and all I can see is the betrayal. I imagine her with him, lying to me, coming home and acting like everything was normal, and I feel sick. I feel like I don't even know who she is. My buddy thinks I should leave. He's been through a divorce himself, and he says the pain of staying with someone who cheated is worse than the pain of walking away. He says I'll never fully trust her again, and I'll always be waiting for the other shoe to drop. He says I deserve better than spending my 40s second-guessing everything my wife does. But it's easy to say that when it's not your life, not your house, not your 17 years on the line. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet if I'm the jerk. Am I the jerk for refusing to refinance our house after my wife had an affair? Am I wrong for protecting my financial interests while we're in this uncertain place? Or is she right that I'm just punishing her, using the house as a weapon to keep her scared and off balance? I genuinely don't know anymore. Some days I feel totally justified. She cheated, she lied for damn near 9 months, and now she wants me to sign financial documents like nothing happened. Other days, I feel like maybe I am being cruel. She's trying to make things work, and I keep holding her mistake over her head. What would you do in my situation? What would you tell someone who's standing at this crossroads, not sure which path leads to happiness and which leads to more pain? I've been trying to make this decision for months, and I'm no closer to an answer. All I know is that I can't refinance this house right now. I can't tie myself to her for another 30 years when I don't know if I want to be with her for another 30 days. Maybe that makes me the bad guy. Maybe that makes me petty and vindictive, like she says. But it's the only thing that feels right to me in this whole mess. I'll update if anything changes, but for now, I just needed to get this off my chest. Thanks for reading. Update. It's been about 2 months since I first posted this, and I promised I would update when something changed. Well, something changed. I'm getting divorced. I know a lot of you saw this coming, and honestly, I think I did too. I just wasn't ready to admit it to myself yet. Let me explain what happened. About 3 weeks after my original post, my wife brought up the refinance again. I thought we'd agreed to table it, but she said she'd been thinking, and she didn't want to let a good opportunity pass us by. She had paperwork printed out, numbers highlighted, the whole presentation ready to go. She clearly put a lot of effort into it. I told her my answer hasn't changed. She got frustrated and asked how long I was going to keep us in limbo. She said she felt like she was walking on eggshells every day, never knowing if I was going to stay or leave. She said the uncertainty was killing her. I told her the uncertainty was killing me too, but I didn't create this situation. That started another fight, and we ended up not speaking for almost 2 days. During those 2 days of silence, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that every time we fought now, it came back to the same thing. She wanted me to move forward and act like the affair was in the past. I couldn't do that because for me, it wasn't in the past. It was still right there. Every single day, sitting between us like a wall I couldn't climb over. I started asking myself some hard questions. Could I ever really trust her again? Could I ever look at her without thinking about what she did? Could I ever be intimate with her without wondering if she was comparing me to him? The answer to all those questions was no, not right now, and maybe not ever. And that's when I realized I was just prolonging the inevitable. I was staying out of fear, not out of love. Fear of starting over at 43, fear of what people would think, fear of admitting that my marriage had failed. But staying in a marriage out of fear isn't fair to either of us. She deserves someone who can forgive her, if that person exists, and I deserve someone I can trust 100%. We were not going to find that with each other, not anymore. I talked to my buddy about it first. He was supportive, said he'd been waiting for me to come to this conclusion on my own. He didn't want to push me, but he said he could see I was miserable and it was only getting worse. He offered to help me find a place to stay and said he'd be there for whatever I needed. Having that support made the next part a little easier. I sat my wife down on a Sunday evening and told her I wanted a divorce. She didn't scream or yell like I expected. She just got really quiet and stared at the floor for a long time. Then she asked if there was anything she could do to change my mind. I told her no. I told her I tried. I really had, but I couldn't get past what happened. I told her the trust was gone and I didn't think it was coming back. She started crying then, not the dramatic sobbing from before, but this quiet, defeated kind of crying that almost broke me. She said she knew this was coming. She said she felt me pulling away more and more every day. She said she was sorry, not just for the affair, but for everything, for ruining our marriage, for destroying our future, for turning me into someone who couldn't trust anymore. I told her I was sorry too. Sorry that we couldn't fix this. Sorry that 17 years was ending like this. We sat there for a long time, just the two of us, crying in the living room of the house we'd bought together when we thought we'd grow old in it. The next day, I called the lawyer I consulted before and officially retained him. He walked me through the process for Virginia. Since we don't have kids, and if we can agree on a separation agreement, we could potentially file for divorce after 6 months of living separately. Without a signed agreement, we would need to be separated for a full year before the divorce could be finalized. He also mentioned that adultery is technically grounds for an immediate fault-based divorce in Virginia, but he said proving it in court can be complicated and expensive. He recommended a no-fault approach since it's usually cleaner and less costly. I agreed. I didn't want to drag her affair through the court system. I just wanted this to be over as painlessly as possible. We agreed that I would move out of the house. It made more sense logistically since her job is closer to the house and mine takes me all over the area anyway. I found an apartment about 15 minutes away, just a one-bedroom that runs me about $1,300 a month. It's clean and quiet, and that's all I need right now. My buddy helped me move my stuff, which wasn't much. I took my clothes, my tools, some books, and a few things that were mine before we got married. Everything else I left for now. We'll figure out how to divide it all during the divorce proceedings. The house is going to be the biggest issue. Neither of us can afford to buy the other out, so we'll probably have to sell it. The equity we built up will finally be divided, just not the way either of us planned. Funny how that refinance doesn't matter anymore. My wife and I are being surprisingly civil about everything. I think we're both just exhausted. Neither of us has the energy to fight anymore. We communicate through text mostly, just logistics about the house and the separation agreement. She asked if we could still do counseling to help us through the divorce process, and I agreed, not to save the marriage, but to end it as respectfully as possible. Our therapist said that was healthy. She said a lot of couples could benefit from that kind of closure, but most are too angry to try. I told my family last week. That was hard. My parents were married for 41 years before my dad passed, and I know they always hoped I'd have the same kind of marriage. My mom cried and asked what happened. I just said we grew apart. I didn't tell her about the affair. That's my wife's shame to carry, not mine to spread around. My brother said he was proud of me for deciding instead of staying stuck. He said he could hear in my voice that I'd been unhappy for a long time, even before the affair probably. I've been doing a lot of reflecting on our marriage, and I'm starting to see cracks that were there long before she cheated. We stopped being partners somewhere along the way and became roommates who shared a bed. The affair was the explosion, but the bomb had been building for years. That doesn't excuse what she did. Nothing excuses that, but it helps me understand that this marriage was probably going to end one way or another. She just sped up the timeline in the worst possible way. I'm not going to pretend I'm okay. Some nights I lie awake in my empty apartment and wonder if I made the right choice. Some mornings I wake up and forget for a second that my whole life has changed, and then it hits me all over again. But there's also this sense of relief that I wasn't expecting. For the first time in months, I'm not constantly anxious. I'm not walking on eggshells in my own home. I'm not analyzing every word and every look, trying to figure out if she's lying to me again. The decision has been made, and now I just must move forward. My buddy says the first year is the hardest. He said after his divorce, he felt lost for a long time before he started to feel like himself again. I believe him, but I also believe that a year from now, I'll be better off than I would have been if I'd stayed. I would have spent the rest of my life suspicious and resentful. That's not a marriage. That's a prison sentence. So that's where things stand. We're working on the separation agreement now. Once we get that signed and 6 months passes, we can file for the divorce. The house will go on the market once everything is finalized. And I'm starting over at 43 in a one-bedroom apartment, trying to figure out who I am without the person I thought I'd spend forever with. It's terrifying, but it's also kind of freeing. For those of you who told me to leave, you were right. For those who told me to stay and work it out, I understand where you were coming from, but it just wasn't possible for me. Some betrayals are too big to forgive. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. I learned that the hard way. To anyone else out there going through something similar, I'll say this: always trust your gut. In some cases, it might be a false alarm. Even if it's a false alarm, something triggered it. Life is too short to spend it with someone who doesn't value you enough to stay faithful. Thanks to everyone who commented and shared their perspectives. It helped more than you know. This will probably be my last update. Time to close this chapter of my life. and start building a new one.